Okay, so supplies. Here's our supplies. What I found, well, I told you about the cornstarch thing, and I think I gave you a recipe about using cornstarch. And
Mm-hmm.
I just want to tell you the difference between like the cornstarch and, let's say, I did order some of this Elmer's art paste. It's really inexpensive, doesn't require heating or cooking. So it's, if you want to get into this, get some of this stuff. It's good. But if you want to just try it out, cornstarch or flour is fine, but you just have to heat it to get it to be thick. So here's the difference between the two. Well, before I go, I'll just tell you about the supplies because I can get off on all these little tangents. These are little silicone uh, ice cube
Ice
trays.
cube. Mm-hmm.
And if you have, you can use just regular ice cube trays. You can use little cups. I like to not throw things away so much. So I've kind of, it makes more work for me. But if you even have disposable cups you want to use, that's less work. But these are reusable, which is nice. And they make a nice container for mixing. So you can see I've got some colors I've mixed. And you want to use all the colors though.
That's so
So
beautiful.
decide how much you want to make. I mean, I've made here enough probably for a lot of stuff. So let me just go over this stuff. Okay, so it's best to have a stir stick or something to make sure your paint. And I just cut some bamboo skewers down because that's all I had. But that's so I can keep it mixed and keep it circulating because you don't want it to dry up. It doesn't dry that fast. I've had this probably mixed for an hour and it's fine. Just so you have the stir sticks. You want to have a brush for each color if it's possible. If you don't have a brush for each color, you'll just have to clean in between. But I've only got 4 brushes here to use, but that's enough for me today. Let's see. You need some kind of mark making tools. Like I have these, but if you don't have these, I've got ways that you can make them. Like these little guys, they're just little tools that I got. I mean, they're all of silicone tools. If you even have these little, what are those things called? They're like, okay, even spatulas. Well, this is kind of like I don't know what that is, but it's kind of a mark making tool. It doesn't have it doesn't scratch. It's made of silicone, so that's cool. That you can use that kind of stuff. Little tools like that. If you don't have tools like that, that's okay. Actually, I made a tool you can use a piece of cardboard, or in this one there's a gift card, well, I used it up, so it's not a gift card it's already been used. But if you have an old
That's a good
hotel
idea.
key or an old anything, and what you do is you take a hole punch and punch holes in the end. So if you can see that, I just
Sure.
punched holes in the end of it, and that will create a mark making that will do just as nice. Now, you need a really heavy duty hole punch to do this because I was using an office one and my hand, it didn't like it. So best is maybe those, if you have a really heavy duty hole punch, that would be great. But you can make notches with scissors. Like if I were to take, let me see, I'll try it with scissors. I'll be careful not to hurt myself. But if you want to make, like, let's say you can make little notches. Oh yeah, I can do it. So I'm making a different kind of notch. I'm just cutting, like I'm going to take little tiny notches out on this one. So you can kind of see, just be careful when you're cutting through plastic so it doesn't, go through you. So I'm just going to make a little mark making tool, and I'm going to use this today because I think it'd be fun. So you don't need to have expensive things. This is what I love about paste paper. And I'm going to show you my samples of papers I've made probably 20 years ago. And I made a recipe book, and I found the recipe, the document even, so I can upload that onto our blog, so you can have some ideas of what to do. And that's kind of a neat thing when you're making paste paper. If you remember what your recipes are, that's pretty cool. So now I've got 3 notches here and some notches here. I'll be able to use that. And an important thing is to have something non-porous, a surface like a kitchen countertop. I have glass palettes, whatever you have, non-porous surface that you can use. You need to spray your papers or wet them beforehand. And so you'll need that. You'll need your you want, or either newspapers, spread your newspapers out, do all, whatever you need to do. And let's just see if I could grab, just gonna make sure everybody's muted, just so, there we go. Okay. So you need your paste. That's the first thing. And then the paints. You can use acrylics, fluid acrylics. You can use inks. You can use craft paint. I've got some Deco Art craft paint here. You can use dyes, whatever you have in your stash. But I'm going to just show you some old stuff I have just to get this out of the way, because we'll start mixing paint and stuff. But this is a little. I taught this in San Antonio, Texas. I taught paste paper. And I remembered I took samples of every paper I made, cut it out, and then I just put the instructions or the recipe. Okay. So whatever I did, I then with the colors I picked the colors. We've got Cindy coming in. We'll say hi. Hi, Cindy. We're just getting started. So here I basically have a recipe. I love the way that looks, by the way. It has a magenta and it has some metallic. It's so pretty. So I've got the recipe here. Quinacridone magenta, Hansa yellow medium, metallic bronze, interference violet oxide, and quinacridone red. So there's quite a few colors here, probably in several layers. And that's what's really cool about paste paper, is that you can do it in layers. So your first layer may not be that exciting, and then after it dries, you can go over it again and do it again. So here's my little, just so you can see, it gives me just the recipes that I need. And I did this so long ago, but it was so much fun. So I'm going to just stick that to the side, and here's some of the examples. And what I like to do is I use these on the ends of books, little books that I'm making. You can use them on cards, like if you want to do a little collage, or you want to just do little bits and pieces, or you can even sew on this and do tags. There's so many things you can do with paste paper, and it is a beautiful, it's beautiful. Well, if you remember the heart the other day, last week that we did, this was a paste paper piece that I had. So it folds up nicely. It depends on the paper you're using. But there's so much you can do with it. So I made this out of just some regular typing paper, and some of these are thicker papers. So whatever you have in your stash, here's some, I love this one. Just kind of, even some old paper that you think is kind of ugly, you want to fix it up, this is what you'll do. You'll just do your paste paper over it. And this is a bigger piece. But this one was on a dark burgundy is the base. So you can see, whatever kinds of papers you have, you could make really cool things happen. So I'm going to put that out, move that out of the way. And so I'm going to move this out of the way, get a space for getting our paints together, or mixing our paint. So I'm going to show you the two different things. I made a batch of the starch paste, and it's actually kind of thin, really. So, but I also have a batch of the cornstarch, which is a lot thicker. So we're going to play with the art paste that's a little thin. I'm just going to pour. It's a little too thin, but I just didn't have time to thicken it. It's probably, it'll work, but it's just not going to be as cool as the thicker stuff. So I'm just pouring a little bit of that. I'm going to make a nice bright red. So that's how you store it, by the way. If you make a lot of paste, make a lot of it and then store it. If you want to store it in the fridge, just make sure you mark paste so you don't eat it later. You'll be glad, because then you can make it at when it's convenient or when you feel like making it. So I'm going to put some red craft paint into the paste. And really there's no specific amount that you need. It's just whatever, you'll know that your paint will be a lot less opaque because you are mixing it with the paste. So what you do is you just mix it up until you get the opacity or the tint you want, and it will be less concentrated because you're mixing it with the paste. So just have that in mind, and this will be a pretty red. And if I wanted to add, let's say, to give it a little more pop, I'm just going to add a little of this quinacridone crimson, because I want it to be a little more, I don't know, more just richer. I think I want it richer. So I'm just going to mix that up. And so you can mix different brands together as long as they're water-based acrylic paints. You don't want to put You don't want to put oils, obviously, but you can put all kinds of things. So this is a really nice rich red now. So I've got a nice color palette here in that batch. And now I want to make some out of the thicker stuff. And I use like a rubber tool when I'm getting this out, kind of like a spatula. But see how thick that is? That's almost like, it's pretty goopy. But I kind of think this is going to be nice. So I'm going to just mix maybe 3 colors of this. It's almost too goopy. But this is the cornstarch that I made. If it's not going to hurt to be goopy like this. We'll see how it mixes, especially when I use thinner paints with it. So always wipe your tools with a paper towel or a baby wipe or something so you can use it later. And now I'm going to put some bright yellow, I think. I've got this nice, it's just a really bright yellow. I'm going to stick that in there. Whoops, I already put it in the other one. There we are. And I'm going to mix it up, and hopefully it will mix in the cornstarch. This is the cornstarch concoction. And yes, it will mix. If you find lumps in your paste, if it's lumpy for any reason, you could use, if it's really lumpy, you can use, what are those things called? It's that cotton stuff. Oh boy, that's the cloth. It's terrible. If somebody wants to chime in and tell me, it's a cloth that you use. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, cheesecloth. You can strain your paste through the cheesecloth to remove any lumps if you don't, because you don't really want a lot of lumps in your paste. This is pretty thick. I might add a little. Oh heck, let me just add a little bit of, just a tiny bit of magenta, because I want it to be more of a yellow. I don't know, a little bit more of an orangey yellow. So I'm just mixing that up. And it's pretty thick, but that's going to be great because it's going to go on really nice and make nice peaks onto the paper. So that's the color I want, which is really I like that color. And then I think I'd like to try some blue. So we'll just make some primary colors in this. So I'm going to put some blue in this one. And then I'll just do the magenta only in this one. Let's see how that works. That's it. That's all I need. And if I want to add add more colors, more concentrated color, I can do that, especially after I've tried it. When I've done my first pass with as paste paper, then we'll know. So this is super thick. So like one is almost on the thin side and one is almost on the thick side. So we'll see how they act. And I may, there's nothing I can do about making this thinner now, because if you cook it, you may want to, if it's just too thick, well, you just have to deal with it the way it is. And it might be interesting. I think I might try a little test to see if I can mix the not the cornstarch, but the art paste with the cornstarch and see what happens, see how it reacts. That might be kind of fun. So I'm going to put a little quinacridone crimson. These are very transparent colors, what I have in this batch here. I have really transparent colors. It's also good to have baby wipes on hand if you want to keep your hands kind of normal, and have a trash can nearby. Okay, so now that we've got our nice colors, so cornstarch in the red, ice cube tray, and all right, now we've got our other, oops, we just had a major thing happen. That's funny. All right, so what I did is I got some paper wet. I am working on different kinds of papers, and if you could see, I just blotched some color on one of these. So I'm just going to start on that because it's already got color on it. I'm on a glass surface, and what you need to do, and always remind you, it's going to be messy. Just so you know, it's going to be messy. So what I do, I can even wipe this off because I plan to dampen my paper. This is very important when you're working with this. You want to dampen your paper. So I use a spritzer, and I want to get both sides, and this happens to be, just so you know, hot press watercolor paper. It's I think it's 140 pound. Yeah, it feels like it. So I'm just going to get it wet, and actually the longer you let it sit, the more the paper relaxes and it swells, and it will help you when you are making your paste paper, so you won't buckle basically. So I'm just going to get it nice and relaxed. And if you want, you can even, with some of these watercolor papers, you can put them in a bath and then just let them dry. I mean, that's probably really the right way to do it. But I want to save time, and I don't want to have to take you into the bathroom to show you what we need to do. So now I'm just going to dab off a little bit of this moisture on both sides. And I've given it a little time to swell up. And I'm just dabbing it now. There. So now it's laying nice and flat on my glass surface. So first one I'm going to try, just for fun, I'm going to try this thick stuff and see what happens. I have some water nearby. I have a brush that I'm going to just use for that. And I'm going to just use a little, and I'm going to leave my stirrers in there just because I might need them. And then I'm just going to grab some of this magenta. And I'm going to work kind of fast. See how it's kind of translucent? And it's a little on the lumpy side. That's okay. And then I'm going to take, and you want it kind of thickish, I mean, not so thick that it's like frosting, but you want to have it nice and moist and you kind of have to work fast. I'm going to just I'm going to put this here. I want to use I want to use the same, here's a nice and thick yellow. Ooh, that's pretty. And then just a nice little coating, but not so thick that it's, like I said, just kind of cover your paper. So there I've got a little thing going, and I'm just going to move that out of the way so I can. All right, now I'm going to make my designs. So I'm going to use a comb. I'm just going to move this out of the way. So now I'm going to just take it and I'm going to go through it like this. You can wipe off you can just decide how much you want to do. Let's say I can go like, you can just create little designs. It's kind of like, and if you don't have these, you can use your fingers. I'm not kidding. You can use your fingers. I'll use this little tool that I made. And ooh, I kind of like that. And then just wipe the, you can do things like this, curves, like this. All kinds of things you can do. Just this is where you just have fun. And you're really basically wiping off what you put on. So, at least partially anyway. So I'm going to just put this one aside. I kind of like that. I'm just going to leave that alone. And I'm going to take this, and I've got a little surface area because it takes a while for your paper to dry. So because I'm working in front of a camera, normally I would just spread it out in front of me, but I'm just going to take this and gently lift this paper off, and I'm going to put it on something to dry because that's going to take some time. So I'm just going to set it aside. And normally I'm just to wipe this off. And a glass surface is really handy because you've got, it's just easier to kind of keep working and wipe off an area so you don't contaminate your colors with other colors, unless you want to. So now I'm going to do another one. And I'm going to just this time, I'm going to take some scrapbook paper. And this is that stuff, I didn't think it was the prettiest of colors. So I think I'm going to spritz this as well. And this is more delicate than the cotton paper that I used. So I'm just going to be careful. I'm not going to rub it too much because it is lighter, thinner. It's just thin scrapbook paper. I'm going to lay it on my surface here, and I'm going to spritz the top and let the paper relax. Take a couple deep breaths and just kind of work the little bubbles out and maybe smooth it out with your hands. Like there's some bubbles on the inside. So just going to kind of move it from the center and move it out till there's these little guys want to go everywhere. Till there's really you don't want bubbles in here. So just in paper, each paper has its own property. I've never done it on this one, so there we go. Got all my little bubbles out. And now I can start applying paint. So I'm going to try this because I have a lot of opaque colors in here and interference colors. It might be fun to see how that looks. So I'm going to use this. I usually like to have a brush for each color, but I just didn't have enough today. So I'm going to have to kind of wing it. And same with you. If you don't have everything, you can have just a few things. Or instead of having so many colors like I have, you can just try doing it with a couple, 2 or 3 colors. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this teal color, I think will be really fun. This color right here. And this is a little bit thinner. The paste itself is much thinner, and I've got a couple bubbles I see, but oh well. And this actually is teal. This is a teal color. I mixed kind of a mixture of teal and some like a light blue. There we go. And it feels really good. This is the art paste. This has a nice feel to it. It's much easier to mix. Obviously, you don't have to cook it. And this is very cheap. Elmer's art paste. So if you get into this, this is, now I see a big wrinkle there, so it's going to be interesting. I didn't give it enough time to relax, but that's all right. I'll just go ahead anyway. Now you can do things even if you wanted to do something with a brush even. You can do things with a brush. I'll just show you this little thing I like to do. Sometimes you can even make designs. Of course, this one is a very subtle one, but you can't see it, but I'm tapping color into that. But that's one way you can make designs. You can also just use like a little rubber thing if you have something kind of, just silicone, something that's not going to scratch. But you can just do it, or like I said, you can do it with your fingers. And see, it just glides across the paper. I'll just try this one now. And I like that this little, and if I wanted to make little designs like this, I can go in like this. You can kind of doodle on your paper, on your paste paper. I can go across like this. Just never really, there's nothing you can do wrong actually. Okay, so that's kind of fun. And then I could leave that alone and wait till it dries and do another layer, which is probably what I'll do on that one. So I'm going to say with this one, I'm going to transfer the paper off of my table. Now this is where with delicate papers, just be mindful when you're picking the paper up, and then just transfer it or put it wherever you want it to be to dry, because it needs to have time to dry. I'm just going to lay it right on top of that and let it sit. I'm going to move it away. I just noticed I dropped a piece of paper on the ground. That's funny. See, I had done this earlier, and it hit my floor. So it's definitely, it takes a while, because that was maybe, this one, I think maybe, oh, it was really thick. It was this stuff. So, and I noticed that the edges weren't very sharp, but it's getting to where I can do another layer pretty soon. So I want to show you, that's why I did it ahead of time, so we could show you another layer. So just wipe off your area, kind of, and you'll notice you'll be going through a lot of paper towels. Or if you wanted to be more conscious about that, you can just rinse a cloth off or something and just go, just make it so that you're not making so much waste if that's how you feel about it. Because I'm kind of like that. I don't really like making a lot of waste. So I've got another piece. I've got this. This is like I don't know. It's like a Bristol board. It's very thin. I mean, it's crisp, but it's very shiny. So it'd be interesting to play with that. So that's best. Would just take old scraps of things that you have, and I might just go ahead and wet some of the other papers down, because they do need time to relax. I'm finding you don't, and this is like more of a watercolor paper. In fact, I'm going to get them good and wet. This is a little heavier, much more water in this sprayer. And just, especially the cotton-based papers, they can use a good soaking, and it won't hurt them at all. Like I said, I've even put watercolor paper in a bathtub, so that they get them good and soaked so that they can relax. And let that, I'll just set that one to the side. Maybe grab another hot press paper just to have. Get it nice and wet. There we go. Now those will have time to do their thing. So this one is not cotton. This is just Bristol board. I think it's just something I had out of a pad. And I'm just going to take a little, let that kind of swell up, let the fibers swell. And now I'm just going to dab off the excess. And now I've got a surface to play with, to play on. All right, so let's see. What can I use? I'm going to use some of this. I'm going to combine these two just to see what happens. I don't think there'll be any reaction, but we got to use some up this paint. So if you want to, you can actually even take your stick. I'm going to try this instead and see what happens. I'm going to take my little stick and put some color on there. Let's see, take this stick and put some color on. Or better yet, I didn't have popsicle sticks, but if I had popsicle sticks, this would have been perfect to lay, oops, put the color on. Because these are a little not very easy to apply color. So you can even use the rubber tool, that would work. This little guy, because then it's easy to wipe off. So if you don't have a brush, you can just put your color on. So interesting. I'm just going to lay it on there and see what happens. I'll put a little of this yellow. But since these are transparent colors, they will mix well together. They won't make mud. It's kind of like my go-to color combinations are these transparent colors. Now I'm just going to take a plain brush. Oh no, I'll just take this one that already has that magenta on it. So now I'm just going to take the colors and I'm just going to kind of smooth them out a little bit. And we're going to see what happens with this globby cornstarch, which is still fun. Okay, now this is the fun part. I'm going to take this part and I'm just going to make my little marks. Here we go. Ooh, fun. That one's fun. Just wipe off whatever excess. If you have excess, just wipe it off. And let's see, that one's just fun by itself. But if I want to add more, here's one. I like this. This is a nice comb because it has a fat area that you can work. I'll just take it and I'll run it through the center. And see this, what's happening is the paint has stained what's underneath, which I think is fun. And it's kind of really, there we are. It looks like ocean waves or something. And I might even drag it. You can always overdo it, but I'm going to just do it again here. I'm just kind of just going slowly. And I'm wiping off a lot of the paint. But that makes it more fun. Just going to take a little off this edge. Now I'm going to set that aside. I'd say that one is done. I'm going to try to get another board. I'm going to just lift this up, and these will look so much different when they've dried. Here, I got that just set up here, and then I'm just put it away. All right. How much? We're going to do some more here. I was hoping that one would dry so I could show you the second layer. I've got this area is cleaned off. And let's see, now I've got a nice wet one that's already, we haven't tried this yet. This is watercolor. It's a cold press watercolor paper, and I got it nice and wet already. So it should, even wetter if I want. It should do really nicely. But the longer you let those relax, the better you'll be. So I'm just going to dab it off a little bit. Just kind of get that excess off because I want to have enough color on that. Okay. Now I will put some paint on here. Let's see. I think this blue would look really pretty. And this is a kind of a combination of, I don't know, let's see, what is that? Phthalo blue and some craft paint that I got. Some Americana craft paint is what that is. And that, I really have to say, I like the consistency of the art paste much better than the cornstarch. But the cornstarch is a good go-to if you have nothing else to work with. So I'm just putting that on. And just the brush strokes make beautiful marks. You can even just make marks with your brush like this. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of this red just to see what happens. And then I can just put it in there. And you can make like even whatever you want. You can put your fingers in there, but I don't know. Maybe I should. I'm just going to go for it. So if you see how you can make marks with your fingers, it's like finger painting. It is finger painting. And then, but it is more translucent. So if I wanted to go a little brighter, I would have to use something a little more, I have to add more paint, much less paint and more paint, or much less paste and more paint. So here I'm just going to make my little marks, kind of like I don't know what that theme is. And if I want to too, you can just take areas and just take like sweeps of areas and do your, just have fun. I'm going to leave it like that. And then maybe, it seems like what I like are to take bold areas off. Here's one that I've had for a while. I haven't used it for this, but let's see what happens. Let's see, I'm going to go around like this, kind of make a curved mark. There we go. So if I can move this out of the way, I can do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to go like this, like sweep it like a windshield wiper. And creating that shape, or that, removing some of that paste. And if I want to, and I see that because that paste isn't as thick as the other stuff, it makes softer edges. So my suggestion was make your paste as thick as melted ice cream or whipping cream. You know, like when you put whipping cream, that sort of has some kind of peak to it, so that your lines or your areas are sharp. I'm just going to do the same thing, make little marks here. And I noticed that this one is the watercolor paper, so it's moving. It sort of has a soft edge. And with the cotton papers, you have so much more, they're stronger, so you can actually do a lot more with those. You can beat them up a little bit. So I'm going to just leave that one alone, and I'm going to come back to it later, though. I plan to come back and just layer it with something else. I'm going to take just gently lift it up from the corners, and then find a place to put it and let it dry. And like I said, it takes probably, I don't know, wherever you live, and you really can't expedite it. Like, you can't really hit a blow dryer, really doesn't help it to do that. Like, this one's still wet, but I want to show you, you can see it's still wet, but I can see the edges are dry. So I was going to do something, or I could take a paper that I already had from before, wherever I put them, but I'll wait for a second. I'll go through these. So this is nice, and these are nice and it's already been relaxed. So I'm going to try another color. This time I'm going to pick it up with this and see what I can do. So I'm just going to put some color down with this like a rubber brush is what this is. I think it's called Master's Touch. That's it. And I'm just so I don't contaminate the colors, I'll just pick up another color. Maybe I'll throw in a little bit of that paste, that yellow in there, just to get it, mix it up. There we are. And that's my gooey stuff. My gooey cornstarch. So if you did cornstarch, that's probably what you have. It's going to look like that. And I already put that through a cheesecloth, and it still wants to be like that. So I'm just I could brush this with a brush, which I was planning on it. I'm just going to grab a paper towel. Oh, here we go. I've got a brush, the dry one. I'm just going to go through and just kind of paint it on. I don't want to overdo it, because I just want to get I want that white covered somehow. And even like that, that's kind of fun, just like that. It looks really interesting. But I'm going to go over it with the tool. And I think I want to add, this time, I'm going to add a little bit of interference. I have a color, it's called interference blue. I'm just going to add a little bit of that into it, just to see. Roll that in there, and just kind of move it around. Now that color is, ooh, yes, it does something really nice. So just putting that on, and now I'm going to use my combs, my little combs. See, I think this one was, what could I do here? I'm just going to go like this, and just like that wavy motion like that. Kind of really fun. We'll grab some. Now, if you don't want to waste a lot of paper towels, just take the paper towels that have already dried in your trash can and go back and use those, so you don't feel like you're wasting a roll of toilet paper. So you're not wasting a roll of paper towels. You can reuse them because it's just trying to dab off the extra. So here I've got these little ticks. I'm going to make little doodles in between. And you can see I'm just pushing the paint around. And you can doodle, and this would be a fun little way. And you can spend more time. I'm rushing through each one, but because you really don't have to rush. The paste takes a while to dry. There we go. So that one's kind of fun, just like that. I'll leave that one alone, and when that dries, we will see how it looks. Now I'm going to try, even though it's a little soon, I'm going to try to layer over the other one I was telling you about. So I've got this. I'm going to pick it up. You could even do this over, well, probably magazines probably wouldn't really do really well because magazines are a little bit too delicate. So here I've got this. And I'll just sit there and I'll wait for it to dry. The part that takes patience. So here's the one I had done earlier. Normally I would wet it, which maybe I will on the back. Just so that it kind of will stick on and maybe I'll just wet my surface a little bit. And that hopefully will get it to lay flat. Now if this paste paper was dry, like this sides are dry, it's not going to move around, but I see that part's really super wet, so I'm afraid to touch it. But I'm trying to get it to lay as flat as I can without disturbing the paint. Now, I'm going to do something with copper over it and see what happens. I'm going to take my brush and just grab a brush and get it dried up a little bit. And if you don't want your hands yucky and dirty and stained, definitely wear gloves. I'm not wearing gloves, but I probably should because paint's getting everywhere. And the good news is it's not on the floor yet. Only a few things are on the floor. But because the paste takes a little bit of time to dry, you're probably in good shape, as long as you don't have a carpet, you're not working over carpet. Okay, so I'm going to try a little bit of this copper because I think it's so pretty. I'm going to put it over the whole thing. And some of it's going to smear because it's not dry, but you would normally do this over a completely dry layer. I love that copper. So pretty. And then if I want, I can add a little bit of this interference blue just to add some pizzazz. And now I'm going to just do my thing. This time I'll use this guy and see what happens. See, it just basically goes, you've got it to go through the layers, and you have still what's underneath is showing. Maybe this one. I do like I like going wherever it is. I had another tool somewhere. No, let's see. There's like for wide areas, like this one's kind of cool because this one has 2 angles. So if I wanted to do a really wide area, let's say this little corner here. If I wanted to do corners, I can take little bits of color off. And since those were dry, I think that's what would look really nice. So you can get the same effect that you did with the other tool with different types of tools. You can use knitting needles. You can use you just don't want to scrape something that's going to scratch it like a table knife or something. I'm just going around. Here we are. I can do this in all corners. Like the less I think about it and just do it. There we are. So same thing, I'm going to let that dry, or I can just take some little areas that kind of look thick. If you see areas where there's just too much paint, just pull it off. You can actually just pull it off a little bit. Now I'm going to take that and put it somewhere, wherever I have a space here. Let's see. We got another one of these. And it gets thicker, but it's going to dry nice and flat. The The only thing that's going to dry shiny is your paint, because the starch paste always dries flat. So look at this one. You can see the layers and the texture through there. You can see, now that will show somewhat some of that layering and that texturing, but it will soften as it dries. I'm going to try, I've got one more piece. I'm going to wipe this off. And really, you'll want to, after today, you know, just keep doing it. Once you get into the rhythm of it, you'll just want to always take like a day or an afternoon or a morning, some time to devote to this, and then you'll have papers for many years to come that you can use for your projects. So here I'm going to put, let's see, and I'm running out of brushes, so I need to clean one off. And really, if your brushes, if you're going to have to clean them like I'm doing in between each one, then just make sure they're kind of dry, because you don't want them really soaking wet because there's already enough moisture in the paste. All right, so for fun, let's see. I've got a lot of color in this one, and I'm going to just go back to my wheat or my art paste from Elmer's. And this time I'm going to do something a little different without the rubber tools. And then I'm going to wipe this off, and I'll grab a little of this teal, this blue color, because that's so pretty. So it's almost like an ocean theme. And there we go. I'll put a little up here. And if I wanted to add a little of this beautiful interference blue, because it is so gorgeous, I'm just going to throw it in there. Now I've got a nice soft wash of blue. And you can do things like to make, like I've got a knitting needle. Now, when you're working with a knitting needle, just kind of go, like I like to write things, but just kind of use the dull end and just very gently, especially on cotton paper, you can get away with this. So I'm just kind of gently scribbling into it. Just making you can write things. In fact, you can even write an affirmation or you know, a thought or someone like today, I know someone who's getting a surgery today. So it's like, okay, you know, positive thoughts for that person going through it really well, or just something that or a prayer, or anything that works, that you would like to just kind of make an affirmation, but it's there, it's kind of hidden as well. And then you can also take, if you remember our dotting tools that we had for, you know, these little cylinders, I'm going to try, just for fun, making little dots with my cylinders, which I am able to do. I can see I'm making little dots. You can use rubber stamps, actually, also. If you have a rubber stamp you like that has a nice block print, then you can put that through it. Let's see, what else do we have to play with? Like I said, fingers, the backs of brushes work really well. Even things like the side of your paint, bottle makes marks. So I'm just kind of, you know, going across anything to make marks. You can do it. You can, like this little guy, I like these little guys, a little wedge or a spatula that's in your kitchen, silicone spatula. You got all kinds of tools to work with. And this paste, now that it's had a little time to kind of, I don't know, marinate or settle, it seems to be doing really well. Much better than I thought it would. So even though I thought it was a little on the thin side, it's still workable. And I'm just going to do that, and then I'll set that one aside because I think that one's pretty cool. Or I can keep going. You can do, like, let's see, why not, little drawings. So instead of doodling with a pen, we're just removing paint to create new designs. Just kind of, see, I'm just wiping off this little guy and connecting those other shapes that I made. And when you see it wet, it looks much different when it dries. It looks really beautiful when it dries. So whatever you've made, I'm sure when it's dry, it's going to be fabulous. There, got that. That's done. And I'll just let that sit or dry, and I'll pull it up. Take your finger, if you don't want to get your fingers dirty, you can always just use a spatula or something. I'm going to take that and move it over. I'm going to go see if I have anything that's dry enough for you to see. Let's see. On the first thing I did, when the first one, okay, well, it's not quite dry yet, but the first one is the cornstarch, and it's starting to dry, nice and matte. You can, I don't know if you, I think I'm going to go with some something over that. This one is the scrapbook paper, and it's getting there. You'll see, you'll know if it's still too shiny. If it's really shiny, you know it's not dry yet. So that one is not dry. I think what I'll do, if I want to decorate this one, which I do, I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to get my area cleaned off a little. I love this glass palette. It's huge. It's like a 24 by, I don't know, 820 by 24, I think. It's really handy. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to go ahead and do, I think, some copper and gold over that would look so pretty. I'm just going to take, and you can see how little paint I've used. So I'm going to be here all day. But we'll definitely, I want to see if anybody has any questions. This is probably a good idea to, if you have questions or you want to ask anything, this is the time. You can chime in. You can unmute yourself and ask if you'd like. So I'm just putting I'm going to put some gold right over this. Just lay it right over, and if it's dry, if the layer underneath is dry, it won't disturb it. And another beautiful color to do, which I didn't think about, and I have this zinc white, and I just really want to put some on. Because zinc white is gorgeous. It's sort of a transparent white, and it's really pretty when you put it over a darker color. So I've got this, and then I'll pick up some copper here, just because that's a little dark or a little bit bright over there. And I've got some, I'm going to just put some white on. And the reason I'm putting it straight on, there we go. I'm going to mix it with the paste that's already on there. Just a soft, and it just makes a really soft color. So now I can do my thing, which is basically, I'm going to just take it and see how the magenta now is peeking through. So you've got layers. You can create these layers. They're just so pretty. See how that one looks. And then I can do a little two-part one here. And I love that magenta peeping through and the underlayer under that. And I'll let that sit. I'll have to dry that. But see how you can just layer, and you can even do 3 layers, because the paint does dry fairly. It should dry flattish, flat enough for you to just keep working layers. So here's so I got my second layer on that one, and I think I'm just going to let them dry. And oh, here's one I want to. Let me see if I can get this one. That's way too wet. I wanted to do a color, something over that. So what I'll do is, when this one dries completely, I'm going to do some interference blue, just to, and some pretty golds maybe. And well, you'll see them maybe on tomorrow, or I can also post pictures of the finished pieces. But there it is. So when you're cleaning up, when it's time, even though I'm not going to clean up yet, because I'm going to keep doing this, but always afterwards, when you're finished, just wash out your brushes, because that is acrylic paint in them. And when you're really finished with your trays, scoop them out into a garbage can, or wipe off. Like here, I can wipe these things so I can reuse them. Don't want to throw them away. And once once the paint's dried on them, they'll be reusable, and they won't contaminate the other paints. And just kind of clean up your area. I'm not going to clean up yet because I want to do some more later. I'll keep doing this till the end of the day, probably. Well, not to the end of the day, maybe till lunchtime, which is coming up soon, actually. So just what I love about having, you see, it's easy to clean up everything. The acrylic, and the paste seems to make things a little easier to clean, which is amazing. So there we are.